Today I'm going to show you how to draw your name in a simple one-point perspective.
That means that you have one vanishing point on your horizon line and all of the perspective lines are going towards that vanishing point.
I have a half sheet of printer paper here, but you can do this on paper of any size. You'll also need a ruler and of course your pencil. The first thing that I need to do is give myself a horizon line. I need to make sure that my line is straight across and not tilted at all. So about 1/3 down from the top, I'm going to line up the end of my ruler to the edge of the page so that way I know it's straight and draw my line all the way across.
The horizon is a horizontal line where the sky meets the land. Label the horizon on your paper. Next, we need the vanishing point. This is going to be halfway along the horizon line. It doesn't have to be perfectly measured. My paper is 8.5 inches wide, so I would need 4 1/4 inch for the halfway point, but you can also just eyeball it. Label the vanishing point on your paper. This is where the perspective lines will meet up.
Now I need to give myself the space for my letters at the bottom of my paper. So I'm going to draw a straight line across the bottom for where the bottom of the letters are going to be, just a little bit above the bottom of my paper. And for this, you want to draw it very, very lightly. These are just going to be guidelines for the letters, so they don't need to be very dark. And then about 1/3 of the way up, the top for the letters too. I want them to be large enough that we can really see what's going on while we're drawing. And also it's a good idea to have a line in the middle of that too. Again, it's okay if it's not absolutely perfect in the middle. I'm just gonna go ahead and eyeball that and draw that line straight across as well. So you should have your horizon line, your vanishing point, and 3 lines for your letters. Before I start writing out my name, I want to make sure that the spacing for the letters is enough so that way it's even. I don't want to have really big letters over here and then have to squish a bunch of letters at the end. So what I want to do is on a separate sheet of paper or just off to the side, I'm going to write the name that I need to put here. And I'm going to use my nickname, Tesla. So if I count here, it's 5 letters. So I know that the S needs to be in the middle. If instead my name had an even number of letters, like John, I would need to have the J and the O on the left side and the H and the N on the right. So I wouldn't have an actual letter in the center.
To make sure that everything is in the right place, I sketch out the general bones of the letter just like how I would write them normally. I start in the middle and work towards the right. Then I go back and do the letters at the front of the word to make sure that the center letter is exactly where I need it to be. The name or word that you choose should be between 4 and 8 letters long. More than 8 letters can make things very squished. Most block letters have a very distinct corner that you can draw a perspective line from, so they're best to start off with. Essentially, I just outline the written letter and try to keep it as consistent thickness on all the different parts. This doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you should try your best to make it neat and tidy. Once you're done with your letters, then you go ahead and erase the guidelines inside the letters and also the guidelines from the top, middle, and bottom.
Now I'm going to start drawing perspective lines towards the vanishing point so that way my letters look 3-dimensional. What I want to do is look for all the points at the edge of the letter, and I line up the corner of my letter here to my vanishing point. So if I'm using the letter kind of as a pivot, and then make sure that it's touching my vanishing point and touching the corner of that letter.
And I draw my line from the letter to the vanishing point and stop.
I need to continue that for every single point.
For this corner, if I draw the line all the way to the back, it would cross on top of the letter E. So I draw only until it hits that next letter and stop. I make sure to double check all of the corners. If there's any corner where you would draw on top of the letter, leave that one alone. The last corner gets lined up to my vanishing point, and I draw the line only until it hits the letter E. Then I'm done with my first letter. Again, make sure that you line up the corner to the vanishing point. E has a lot of inside corners, and I make sure to check all of them so that way I know that I'm not missing any ones that are necessary, but also that I don't draw any that would go on top of the letter. Because the S is rounded, I use the vanishing point and pivot the ruler until it hits the letter, and that's the line that I would draw. I repeat that process for the rest of the letter, including the corners that it does have.
You'll notice with the T and the E, all my lines were going up and to the right. With the S, because it's right underneath, the lines on the left are angled towards the right slightly, and the lines on the right are angled towards the left, so it makes a triangle.
I repeat with the rest of my letters, making sure to check all of the corners, and also that the ruler is lined up very well from the vanishing point to the edge of the letter.
All of these lines are what we call perspective lines. The reason is because it shows the three-dimensional perspective of these objects going towards the vanishing point.
You can also close off the back of your letters. If this line in the front is horizontal, the line that I draw behind it would need to be horizontal. And if this one is vertical, I would draw a vertical line. The line at the back of the three-dimensional letter should be the same direction and angle as the one in the front. Afterwards, you can erase your perspective lines and your letter will stand in space on its own. We're also going to have some shapes that are floating in space. So I'm starting with a square above the horizon in the upper left, and I follow the same steps as when I did the letters. Line all of the corners up to the vanishing point and draw a line all the way across, making sure not to draw any lines that would cross the shape. To close off the back, again, whatever the line is at the front of the shape needs to be the same line at the back of the shape between the perspective lines. Then erase the extra perspective lines. For my next shape, I want it to cross the horizon line, so I'm going to draw a triangle that goes both above and below the horizon line and erase the horizon line that's behind it because I can't see through this triangle. Then I just need to check my corners again, line them up to the vanishing point, and draw the lines back. You don't have to draw them all the way to the vanishing point, especially because I knew that I wasn't going to have this shape going very far back. Then close off the back of the shape and erase the extra lines. The cylinder is fairly similar to how we did the S. I'll use the vanishing point as a pivot until it hits the edge of the circle and draw my line back for the top and the bottom. To close off the back, I need the same curve as the circle at the front. And of course, then erase the extra perspective lines. Keep filling the rest of the space with shapes of different size, angles, and kind. It's a good idea to double or even triple check that your ruler is lined up well to the edge of the shape and the vanishing point. You can also close off the back of your letters and erase the extra lines so that you have more space for shapes behind them.
Just make sure that you are always lining up either a straight edge or a ruler towards the vanishing point on every single exterior point that you need. That way you have everything correct.